Hello, family members. I hope you're having a nice day today. It's been a rough time for the week, hasn't it? I mean, first we had to endure the open eugenicist policy making during COVID. Just the most vulnerable people are going to die. It doesn't matter. We don't need to take oh my gosh. I'm sorry because I'm immunocompromised. My life just isn't worth as much as yours. Okay, I get it. That was so blatantly, openly eugenicist, and I don't think I heard anyone call it that, but it's what it was. And the eugenicist ball has just kept rolling down the hill, and we are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bolder and more open about it. I mean, the rhetoric that our president uses, be strong, don't be weak. There is a place in society for strength. Strength is a necessary thing in society, but so is weakness. We all start weak. We all start as infants, totally dependent on our family and our support system. And as we get older, we may be blessed to gain strength, but not everybody gets that blessing. Some people don't live past childhood. Some people are disabled. And while they may grow mentally stronger, maybe their body never grows stronger. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe their mind doesn't go stronger, but their body does. Or some combination of the both. Strength is a blessing. It is something that if you are lucky enough to have it, you should use it in a responsible way. But it isn't the only important thing in the world, You get these people who just they've never even read Darwin. They don't know anything about Darwin other than the phrase survival of the fittest. And they don't, the whole concept of social Darwinism is such pseudoscience. They use Darwin's name to try to make their bigoted beliefs seem more rational and more scientific, more logical. And that's frustrating. Rhetoric is a big part of how things have gotten so off the rails in our society. People using hyperbolic rhetoric they don't mean. People using hyperbolic rhetoric they do mean. And the just absolute 100% acceptance of the idea that strength is good, weakness is bad, and we don't need to worry about the weak. Because whatever happens to them is just what they had coming. And that's, jeez, that's heavy, it's not like we haven't had Trump's own nephew straight up say, hey, he told me that I should just let my disabled son die so I could have a better life and move to Florida. He literally said that, and we've been told, but people don't either think about what that means, or they didn't listen, or they didn't care. But the idea that you would tell a father of a disabled child, there's such a drag on your lifestyle. Just let him die. That's his kid. That is his child who has been disabled for quite some time, and he's been taking care of him for quite some time. Why would all of a sudden you just be like, nah, I'd rather go to Florida and golf all the time? What the? Whoo. it boggles my mind. But it's not like we didn't see this coming. I mean, when Trump was campaigning the first time around, one of the first scandals that he had, you remember what that was? It was him making fun of a disabled person. The eugenicist tendencies have been there all along, and I want you to think about who is weak in society. Babies, your elders, cancer patients, and other people who are dealing with acute or chronic illness. You know, burn survivors. I like watching stories about people who survive extreme events. And one that really sticks out in my mind is the Wakari White Island volcano. There were a bunch of tourists on a volcano, an active volcano, when it erupted, which is frustrating all on its own because that should never have happened. But there is one of the survivors who has been very vocal and very open about her recovery process. And, you know, burns victims, that's a huge, huge thing to recover from, extensive burns. That's who's weak. And the thing that's really funny to me is a lot of the weak people are people who have a lot of strength because they're going through it, you know? They are strong in a lot of ways. They're just weak in the ways that he's talking about. You know, I have to remind myself that a lot, you know. I never wanted to have a YouTube channel where I'm just doing a straight commentary, no edits, no script. I wanted to do like video essays. And if you look at my early channel, I have some. And they're not bad, but I just could not do that. That production, even a small amount of production that I did on my cell phone, using just apps on my phone, was too much. If I wanted to keep being able to speak out and use my voice, I was going to have to compromise and just do the easiest thing I could. Remove as many barriers from my way as I could. And through my weakness, I had to get creative and find a way to make it work as best I could. And so maybe I don't have the YouTube channel that I want, but I have the YouTube channel that I have, you know? And I'm grateful for it. You know, I might only have 137 subscribers, and yes, I am very aware of the exact number of subscribers that I have, and I can't help myself. I cannot stop watching. It should not matter as much to me as it does. But every time that number goes up, I'm like, and anytime I've ever lost a subscriber, I was always like, oh, my heart. It's so funny to me. But, you know, it's just, it's nice to be able to have a little bit of feedback in any way or shape or form. And yeah, I want to feel like I have a little power, you know, like that there are people who want to listen to me, who are listening to me. I wish I could be, you know, dressed in one of my cute outfits with long hair fixed, a little, probably fascinator maybe, a veil, something a little extra, all the makeup, set up perfectly so there's not anything in the background you don't like. Like, yeah, I know. I have a box and a bag of water, bottles of water. Oh well, I can't help it. That's what's there. I did not have the energy to get up and move them by the time that I got set up. I had to choose what was more important to me, spending my energy on this or on that. And I think it takes strength to be able to accept those compromises. I think that there is a lot of strength in what people call or think of as weak, you know? I think a lot of people think of babies as weak. I mean, they are in a lot of ways, but I mean, think about the fact that they've gone from developing in a certain environment and have been thrust into the world, and they have all this stuff around them that they don't understand and have no frame of reference for, and really don't have the cognition to make much sense of, right? Like, how do we know that babies aren't extremely strong in their own selves internally in the time when they're physically so weak? I mean, their bodies are growing and changing, their brain is developing. Is that not strength in a way? You know, I don't think weakness and strength are such separate things. You know, for example, our strongman president may be strong in some regards, but, you know, I don't see him like running up and down stairs. You know, and that's fine. He's an old man. Old men don't have to be able to be like super duper nimble. I'm not holding him to that standard, but I'm just saying that he has places where he has weaknesses too. Okay? ah, you know, it's all right to be weak. It's all right to be vulnerable. It is a good thing. It is a mark of a good person that they hold up weak people and help them be stronger. It is hard. It's really hard to have all of these eugenicist ideas constantly thrown out and accepted as if they're sound logic. It's funny to me that we have Donald Trump telling us that, you know, people are going to have to suffer for a little while, but it's going to get better. But in the context of what he's talking about, we're not talking about a person, you know, who, when an organism, when they're fighting off a disease, may have certain cells that get, you know, destroyed in the process. But the organism as a whole is still intact, right? A human race is not an organism. We are very interdependent, but we are individual organisms. And when he talks about suffering or weakness, what he means is that the most vulnerable people, the people who need our support the most, will have to die. I mean, we're talking about things that are life or death. You know, they're removing food assistance. They're removing all sorts of social supports. They're removing all sorts of regulations. You know, it's not going to be easy to maintain a health. If pollution is just allowed to run rampant, and one thing I watch a lot is disaster videos, like ships sinking or building collapse or whatever. And a lot of the time, there was a regulation in place that could have prevented whatever the heck happened. Or people had pointed out a problem well in advance and nothing was done about it. And that was because the regulations weren't being enforced appropriately. Like, that is happening now. It was already underfunded. All of our regulatory bodies, all of them, were already underfunded and overstressed. And now they're getting all these weird arbitrary cuts, and it's going to get worse. And so, say an inspector misses something and like an allergen, like say peanuts, ends up in something that's marked peanut free. That could kill some kids. Easy. And adults too. But yeah, there are mistakes that can be so easily made in this climate of fuck the weak that will have catastrophic consequences, are having catastrophic consequences. I know we get the mainstream media wanting to talk about the stock market, the stock market, the stock market. The stock market is not the end all be all, all right? Like, I think only 60% of Americans have any money tied up in the stock market. And knowing what I know there's quite a few of them that don't have that much, because I used to back in the day before I had to spend all my savings being disabled. But anyway, so yeah, a very large percentage of Americans, that is not even important to them at all. What is important to them is all this uncertainty. People are getting laid off left and right, and not just in the government, because the uncertainty that we have no idea what this wild card of a president is going to do. It's not necessarily even going to be logical. It could just literally come out of nowhere, and it could be draconian, and he will have absolutely no problem implementing something that is disastrously damaging. Because he fundamentally does not care if actions he take causes people to suffer and or die. We know that. Like, that's where I started. Remember when he said, oh, just let your son die, your disabled son die, my nephew? If he would do that with his own great nephew, do you think he would not sacrifice any of us? Nobody is that important to him other than himself. And all he has around him, people are going to enable him. One thing that I saw the other day that kind of disturbed me is I was watching Glenn Kirshner. And if you don't watch Glenn Kirshner, I do recommend him. He is a former federal prosecutor. I mean, he is a Fed. He's the man. He's maybe not someone that I would agree with in other circumstances, but he is a former MSNBC legal correspondent, retired JAG lawyer, retired prosecutor, and all this stuff. So he has a very interesting view of things, and he's kind of cute. He's like an old dude who really cares about justice, like, I like his channel. I can't say I obviously I can see some of the BS there, and some of where his biases will affect the way that he looks at things. But he gives you an interesting point of view, and he notices things that mainstream media doesn't always notice. He left MSNBC, he said, because it wasn't doing enough to meet the moment. And I definitely agree with that, because there are details like what he discussed that I just don't hear about anywhere else. He talked about how when one of his cases came up before a judge, and the judge was asking questions of the Defense Department lawyer that was representing Trump's case, essentially. She was asking him questions, and he had no good answers for her. And it's his job. He's, like required ethically and probably legally to answer. What was the wording that he used? It was like, frankly, candidly, that was it, candidly, and accurately, right? And so, the lawyer went in, he argued the case the best he could, because there wasn't anything that he could legitimately argue. And he has been suspended because he didn't do a good enough job, pleading Trump's case, when there wasn't anything that he could do other than what he did. And they've suspended his supervisor too. I think that is more telling than people realize. It is a message to anyone in any aspect that is dependent on Trump and his cronies, that if you show any sign of weakness and you're not strong in the cause, if you haven't drank the Flavor Aid, then you are expendable. Any hint of weakness, and not only you, but your supervisor too. So managerial staff and the frontline staff are there like, and we're talking about people's livelihoods. We're talking about their jobs. A lot of people in this country, even people with pretty good jobs, are living paycheck to paycheck because they have a lot of debt. They've been encouraged to get a lot of debt, buy a house that's too big and too fancy with too much space that they don't actually need. And the idea of losing their job, just abruptly losing their job, could really wreck their lives and their entire family's lives. And the idea of losing your job is not just like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to find another job. It's, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have interruption in my income that there's no way that I won't. And a lot of households can't tolerate that interruption, because even if they seem prosperous, they are financially weak. I had a friend a few years, like a decade or two ago, I don't know, I'm old now, who was doing independent contractor work. And then the money was just coming in and coming in and coming in. And then all of a sudden that work dried up, and then it was tax season and they hadn't set aside money for taxes. Like, even though they thought they were budgeting wisely, they couldn't predict. It was in the oil and gas industry, because it's West Virginia. There's not much else there. But they couldn't predict how the prices were going to change. And they didn't realize how weak they were until it was too late. And I think a lot of us are going to realize over the coming weeks and months how weak we are. And I hate that for us. So let's not vilify weakness. Let's embrace the places where we are weak, embrace the places where we are strong, and not put a value judgment on either. All right, family members, there is a lizard over there that I need to save. It's on my windowsill, and I got to get it before the cats do, so bye.